Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Headland?
Present.
Commissioner Headland?
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Present.
Commissioner Shine is excused. Commissioner Macon, who is attending by phone. Oh, I heard something for a second. Commissioner Macon was here, so I'm going to count him present, and
We all
hopefully
heard
we'll
his
hear
voice.
from him soon.
We all talked to him, so.
That's right. Commissioner Pinilla is excused. Commissioner Rose,
Present.
Commissioner Buckman,
Present.
and Commissioner Bailey is excused. I believe you do have quorum.
Good.
Thanks to Mark Anthony attending by phone.
Okay, well, we have an item on the agenda to approve minutes of previous meetings from June 14th and July 19th.
Yes, and one addition to the agenda is that I had neglected to see that our May 10th meeting minutes were also forwarded to a future meeting, and we weren't able to, because we were tabling meeting minutes due to quorum, get to that one either. So I'm going to add May 10th meeting minutes for approval this evening. And those are the ones that you have in front of you as well, those draft meeting minutes.
Has everyone had an opportunity to read through these, or do we need a minute?
Yep. Okay, so
Okay.
our advice is typically to take these meeting minutes one at a time. So I'm going to suggest to go in chronological order, which would actually put our May 10th meeting minutes first. So do I have a motion to approve the May 10th meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Rose approved. Do we have a second?
Second.
And Commissioner Buckman seconded. Do we have any discussion or edits? Okay.
So
All
we
those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Okay, that is approved. Let's go to our June minutes. Did we have any edits for those minutes?
I had just one edit
Uh-huh.
on the name of Commissioner Modica. It's Modica, and it said Monica, M-O-N.
Good catch. Any other additions or corrections? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes with that correction?
So moved.
Commissioner Headland moved. Do we have a second?
A second.
Commissioner Fuller seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those meeting minutes are also approved with the correction. Let's take July 19th. This is our last set of minutes for this evening. Any additions or corrections in the meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
A motion to accept?
Commissioner Rodriguez, any second? Do we have a commissioner who will second?
Seconded.
Commissioner Buckman will second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion is also approved. Thank you all for your support. We've got those meeting minutes up to date now. We'll
Yay.
get those updated in our meeting information online.
Okay. Do we have any additional items for the agenda today?
I believe, based on what I know, is that Tracy Dace of Dream is going to be moving his presentation to next month. If we do not see Shea or Jake arrive soon, I would just move them automatically to next month as well.
Okay.
And if it's okay with Charlie Harris, we're going to move Deborah in front of Charlie to present this evening. Is that okay, Charlie? Okay. And then Charlie, for now, I would say, if you're done and ready, we can actually have you take a seat for a minute, because I'll do my staff report first, if you don't mind. Thank you.
And we don't have any public input for today, do we?
There was no public input beyond a copy of the statement from Miriam Larson at last
Mhm.
meeting being forwarded to the commission. Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. So we can
Okay,
proceed
well-
with the staff report?
All right, I don't know if I want to give you permission. I don't want to hear your last one, because then it is your last one.
It is my last one, and, you know, if time would have provided for me, I could have done like, you know, this is the 5 years in review kind of report. But instead I'm not, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I actually really just wanted to focus on some of the accomplishments that we've had this summer in the realm of public art installations, and just really reflect on this changing landscape of public art. Obviously, many of our projects will continue, so I want to speak a little bit to those, and then I'll focus on some images of the public art pieces. Push, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. For anyone tuning in, especially Mark Anthony, who's by phone, what I was saying is that I'm going to be focusing largely on looking at public art installs of the last month, and some change really over this summer. But before I do, I'm just going to give some general updates about some of our programs, especially during this interim time when the arts and culture coordinator position is vacant. And so we'll have some maybe shifts and changes in how the program is functioning. Some of these things are going to be quite easy because there was already some things in place to have the projects continue. So I want to begin by saying that our Artist of the Corridor exhibit by Kathy Mysick, Art as a Bridge, just recently came down out of our corridor. We have no exhibit on display at present moment, and that is partially because we are actually undergoing hallway construction pretty soon in the city area, so we will not have those exhibits continue until that hallway construction is complete. And my hope is that a new arts coordinator will be named by that time, and they'll be able to kind of continue that program forward. We do have an exhibit going up at the library, and we have a relationship with the library where the library's exhibits under the banner of Artists of the Corridor will continue. So you will see some upcoming exhibits, one in conjunction with a book release from Vivian Krishnan called Kula in the Sky. And that is a beautiful children's book that local artist Vivian Krishnan created, and it's fabulous. And also, she'll be giving some version of a workshop, a public talk, and those will all take place at the library with some of those dates forthcoming, but keep a lookout for that. And then the library will continue the Artists of the Corridor programs. They will just focus in the library until the City Hall location will be available. And they will be organized primarily through the library during that time of not having an arts coordinator in place. I also want to mention that our Art Now episodes continue to come out, but we have been in a sort of lull because of some tech needs here at the UPTV. We will be having those premiere soon, so that will continue. You'll see Art Now pop up, and then when a new arts coordinator is named, that could be picked back up as well. We do have Young Artist Studio continuing in the same capacity, so through specifically having the library do the bulk of the coordination while there isn't an arts coordinator in place. These are two, both Artists of the Corridor and the Young Artist Studio programs are two collaborations with the Urbana Free Library. So what this has meant is that in this time, the library is going to step up and take more of a role in those things. We are undergoing the search for the Poet Laureate, and I'm very grateful to report that Commissioner Buckman has just said that she would be willing to help facilitate that jury process and the selection process for the Poet Laureate. And my hope is that the commission will play a role, as is tradition. Usually when we have a jury process, commissioners serve on those juries. So my hope is that commissioners will step up and serve in those juries, and we'll make sure to move those projects forward. Art in Transit recently had a selection. I'm going to talk about it during the public art portion of this discussion, but we do have a selection for that, and that's our new pilot program with CUMTD of putting art on bus shelters. So the hope is that we're doing one this year, but that a new arts coordinator can also pick up on that project. It will be installed this fall, likely when maybe there's an interim time for the arts program, but the new arts coordinator and CUMTD are interested in gathering community feedback after it is installed, making sure that the way that we've carefully tried to do it, both is supportive to patrons and to bus drivers, maximizes visibility, minimizes any traffic concerns, that sort of thing. We will be gathering feedback for that, so I encourage the commission to keep that in mind as the CUMTD will be gathering feedback and hopefully connect with the new arts coordinator to talk about continuing that program. Many of these projects, such as utility box murals, murals on glass, or art in transit, are done in summer, spring, summer, fall months. As soon as it gets cold, we really can't do installs of adhesive vinyl. They don't stick, and it becomes obviously very challenging. So the summer has been a huge time for public art, and that's why it's so important that that continue. As far as the role of the Youth Poet Laureate, Denilah Nash, she's been engaged in quite a lot of activity over the last couple of months. She's been doing a number of events and programs, but being a high schooler, I've also encouraged her to really pursue her own work in these coming months, especially when the commission may take a step in being more involved than the arts coordinator. I have assured her that I will continue to volunteer and mentor her and be involved in her experience as Youth Poet Laureate. But also, I'm really grateful to report that both Heather and Sarah have indicated their willingness to help mentor her as well. So thank you to our arts commissioners for stepping up. And for anyone listening and being a part of the Arts Commission, I encourage you, if you see a project that you would love to help lend a hand towards to ensure its continuity, this is a great time to, voice your favorites and talk about how you could potentially be involved in this interim time. But the Youth Poet Laureate is trying to produce her own book. So our hope is to have her first full-length book out and really encourage her to focus on that in these coming months. And she will have, and are already on our radar, a couple of community engagement, civic engagement events. And lucky for me, I'll get to be a part of one of them that happens at the museum that I'm going to be joining the staff of. And that will be in conjunction with Speak Cafe, which is a historic sort of spoken word. I say historic because it's had a lot of history in Urbana and Champaign, but it's a spoken word open mic night that happens out of the museum that she'll be hosting. But in addition to those things, I want to talk a little bit about public art, and I brought some pretty pictures to, reference. One of the things that I've been delighted by is that we continue to pursue utility box murals. We do have a number of artworks that have been sort of okayed by a jury, not just okayed, but supported by a jury for installation. And we have more artworks and utility boxes than we've had sort of time to install, and the capacity to install, especially with Dean's Graphics. We work with their timeline as well as ours. But our latest this summer was, of course, this piece, Quiet Men 3 by Lisa Kessler, which is now at the Lake House at Crystal Lake Park, and Cloudscape, which I'll get to in a minute. You have seen this slide before, talking about some of the changes that we've had, and I want to report that all of these things that were on the agenda for the summer are now done. So we have a new mural at 25 O'Clock Brewing Company, one at the Adult Education Center. Broadway Food Hall is not quite done, but it is starting in the next week or so, and that's been a really exciting thing to report. I did get a design put in front of me, and I'm very excited for it. And so as far as the coordinators sort of nod in approval, that's been done. It's a really interesting piece that I wasn't able to bring here today to share with you, but you'll see it go on the front facade of Broadway Food Hall. And if you know Eka's work, she incorporates lots of sort of whimsical figures that are sometimes animals, and so it'll have some animals eating at a food hall, and it's an AR mural, so it's an augmented reality mural. Think Pokemon Go. Like if you put your phone in front of it, it'll move on your phone as you move around. So the food will move, like the kind of conveyor belt that they're on is going to move, and the animals will be eating. It's really fabulous, and it's kind of one of the first AR murals of this area, so very exciting addition to Urbana's public art. And it's very bright and colorful, and that'll be on the front facade of Broadway Food Hall. We did have a lot of sculpture improvements in recent weeks, so Ice Pop's got a brand new paint job, Peek Between the Trees got a new paint job from the Public Art League. As you had heard, Public Art League and 40 North we're having a merger of sorts, but really 40 North taking over the work of Public Art League, and that's been a longer process that they've been undergoing, and now they're at the end of. So 40 North will be, for a time, still using the name of Public Art League and working alongside of many of the members of Public Art League to continue that project. But the future, I believe, is that 40 North will eventually take over the project in name entirely. In the meantime, what that has meant is that we maintain a contract with Public Art League to install sculptures on a rental period each year. And your arts coordinator has always served on the jury, but we only install every 2 years. We're a little off track with our years because while that has happened and the pandemic has happened, they haven't had a national call while they've been doing that sort of merger. So my anticipation, and I would encourage our commission to clarify this with Public Art League, but for now, has been that their intention is to do a call, and 40 North will probably head up that call in the maybe February, March time of next year. And there will be a jury, and so I would assume an arts coordinator would certainly be named by that time. If for any reason there wasn't, it would be a great thing to have a commissioner serve on that jury. And that jury basically approves artworks for installation in Champaign-Urbana, not necessarily selects. So the jury says, of all these that were submitted, these are weather appropriate, these are sort of contextually appropriate for our area, these, any number of things, these are the ones we're putting forward as our class of this year. And then they're presented to the public at what is typically a sort of gathering of people that tend to sponsor art. So people that love to support through their funding the arts. And so, and of course the greater public is invited, but many people come, including, and the cities often are selecting directly after that jury comes out, and they're, all the selected artworks are emailed as potentially open to sponsors. So we usually find the ones that we want for Urbana through that process, and the commission has a say in that process. So we got Races, which is in the bottom right corner through that process. What is the Good here in the center from Greg Stallmeyer through that process, and Ice Pops by Craig Gray, and he's out of Florida. So Greg and Bobby Joe Scribner, who did Races, those two artists are from Illinois, but typically it's a national call, and we actually don't see enough Illinois artists. So I'm very excited for 40 North to be taking this up because of the established relationships 40 North has with local artists. I think it'll continue to encourage local artists applying, so I hope we'll see more local folks apply to that program. And then I will be following up with the commission and my new contacts at Krannert Art Museum about disability-aware cities, because it was a grant we co-authored with Krannert Art Museum, and I am pretty aware that I'm going to be involved in some capacity with that program. So hopefully continue to work with the commission in that program, representing eventually CAM. But here's some wonderful pictures of all these different installation improvements that have happened in recent weeks. And as you know, we just have gained so many beautiful murals. So this is Langston Alston's murals, plural. These were, and thank you to commissioners who made it out in the rain for our ribbon cutting for the new Urbana Enlightened mural on the Adult Education Center, which features 5 students and a student's child on the images here. Kinsey Fitzgerald's Native Prairie Roses on Rose Bowl Tavern is just stunning. And Lisa Kessler's 25 o'clock mural here called Summer Rhythm. Very new is the Dance on Illinois mural. So this was directly made possible, and Raphael came and presented last month and talked to you a little bit about it while he was in the midst of painting it, but it's now been completed. And this was directly in response to our invitation to Raphael to give a talk here publicly in Urbana. And I deliberately invited property owners and artists who wanted to learn more about being muralists and property owners who'd expressed interest in murals. And since Fairlawn, which owns the Smile kind of set of buildings that are apartment rentals, has put forth that they really want to rehab a number of buildings that they recently acquired for apartments with public art on the front of them. So they actually made a connection with Raphael at the event that we hosted. the very next day took him around, showed him different buildings, and then within 2 weeks, they had already planned and he had already initiated this next mural, which is why Raphael's got 2 murals in the span of a month in Urbana. He's a very quick worker, so this mural was also finished within a week, which is just astounding to me. But this mural is on 806 West Illinois Street in West Urbana.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
That event at the public library where he spoke was also very fortuitous for me because I had been working with a client that afternoon, and the gentleman who came in last identified himself, and I went, I wonder if that's her husband, and it was.
And this is, I think, points to something very important that I would impress upon you to value in the hiring of the next arts coordinator and the work of the commission and the arts coordinator in general, which is that the things that I think have been some of the most fruitful things I've done in this role have been informal and formalized opportunities for artists to meet each other and network with one another. So you'll probably, in this next time of the arts grant period, we will probably, I would imagine, unless an arts coordinator is hired and hits the ground running really quickly, we'll probably forego like the in-person art grant workshop. I hope not, but it's likely to me that that would be something we probably don't do in the recruitment period of arts grants, since that typically happens right in October, November, December time, and that'll be very new for a new arts coordinator. So with that in mind, I would suggest keeping that though on your radar, because one of the things that has been so valuable to me in doing those arts grant workshops is I've done usually between 6 and 8 of them during that recruiting period. And I'll deliberately put one at the University of Illinois, I'll put one at Parkland, I'll put one like at Salt and Light in Urbana, I'll put one in the library. We've done them at Common Ground with the help of Sarah Buckman. And so many of those have really strategically been placed in areas where we have, we reach the students, we reach the community, we reach underserved areas of the community, and they gather people that are interested in applying. And one of the things I tended to do was say, okay, can everyone give your like one sentence elevator pitch version of what you're going to do or what you're proposing? And that's when people would hear each other's ideas and want to have a conversation with that person or that person or that person. And so many things were forged just in those moments of artists getting a chance to talk about their work. So definitely keep that on your radar as you move forward as a commission and are thinking about what you want to prioritize for arts coordinator work, because I think that they're the things that could easily be seen as not as important, that relationship building side of the work, but I've seen so many fruitful things come from prioritizing relationship building in this position. So that's my spiel as far as some things to think about related to that. Real quick, I want to mention, of course, Art in Transit I spoke about a minute ago, but here's our selection. It's Alliance by Kay Hieronymus W., otherwise known as Kelly Hieronymus Whitting. And it's a beautiful piece. It's actually 4 pieces in its entirety, and the MTD is working with 2 of the pieces most likely to wrap them around the back of the bus shelter, which is actually this far left bus shelter here. So they'll go on the door furthest left, which is the southern door, and it'll wrap around the back, but it won't be around the back. I should say it'll wrap in the front, so the interior of the bus and the door is where it will be seen from, which means it'll have visibility from the street and the visibility from the south side, but not be per se a hazard for bus drivers looking to see who they're picking up from the other side. It will be perforated, so there's ways to see through it, and then we're going to do cutouts to make sure that we emphasize visibility. But this is a project I'm very excited about and will continue. And then just some other examples of beautiful artwork that we continue to have made possible through programs like the Great Art Doors and others. But that's really what I wanted to share today, is the happiness I've had with a lot of new public art going in. I know that momentum will continue, and I've been informed by not just one, but a few different property owners who own multiple properties. So especially those that own apartment complexes, that they too would like to have murals on their apartment complexes. So one thing that I would impress upon the commission as well is to really be thinking of drafting guidance for murals, and it doesn't have to be like policy. I think actually I would encourage us to shy away from that exactly, but more like, and this is what I already have started, but I have some mural guidance drafted up that I'd be happy to email and share but really just what I communicate to property owners, which is how they could work collaboratively with the Arts Commission. If it's not juried, maybe it could simply be, involve kind of running things under the nose of the Arts Commission just for us to help and assist with, especially taking a look at art, making sure that we don't see anything that gives us pause, but instead that, we would enthusiastically welcome. And I say that to tell property owners, like, if you've got, something that could be a copyright concern, or could be a concern related to a representation, or, something that, God forbid, is offensive, like, we would love to be able to alert you to that before you go and paint it, So these are some things that I've encouraged them to do, and thinking about how we can work together. And you saw these, but some activation in the recent months of Cinema and Sound, and then Illinois Shakespeare Festival in our Boneyard Creek area. I should also note that the Boneyard Creek electrical study is nearing finished, and what that study was the city involving the original architectural firm and some others that had designed this Boneyard Creek area to evaluate the possibility of us adding electricity. Because I'll tell you, as probably the person that programs that area the most, it's very underutilized. We really rely on the generosity of 25 O'Clock Brewing Company, generators, and a number of things to make events happen. So that's been a more broad conversation about how to activate that area a little more. And my hope is that that too will be a topic that the commission will get to hear more about as that study comes out.
Is that something that the city would set up?
So what the way that it goes is that a study, this is my very bare bones understanding, so apologies, and maybe city staff will need to correct me later, but my understanding is that a study typically happens before, I say, hey, we should have outlets out here. The first thing is, well, we need to do a study. And it's costly. We have to do a study first, but part of the reason why is because that is also a intentional flood retention area. Mm-hmm. The whole thing floods, sometimes all the way up to where the road is. And so with that in mind, electricity needs to be really carefully thought about. And then also just circuits, how many amps are available, where they would be located, how that interfaces with existing lighting structures and electrical structures that are out there. So all of that is a bigger conversation, and that also will lay out priorities and things. So I walked around with the architectural representative. We talked about kind of how I tend to activate, but then more importantly, what I could see happening that doesn't yet happen. So for instance, I don't utilize the eastern side of that whole green space, hardly at all. And part of it is that I have a great relationship with 25. It's been easy to use their outlet to cut, there's a way to close the street over there that's a little bit convenient. So just the convenience of it has prioritized that side, but there's a whole other side of that green space. And there's even that beautiful railroad tie sculptural element that's there, the sculpture, What is the Good by Greg Stallmeyer's on the other side. Mm-hmm. And it actually has tables and chairs where somebody could do a small concert out there and actually have existing tables and chairs. There's lots of opportunities. I'm winking at Barbara. Yeah, definitely do a concert over there. But only if you don't use amplification right now, because everything else is challenging. So we talked about prioritizing outlet over there. My hope is that you'll see the full results of the report, and then it can be something that's followed up on as well. But that's a mouthful to say. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be your arts coordinator for the last 5 years. I'm sad that this is my last meeting and my last day at the city, but I'm happy I got to spend my last few hours with the Arts Commission. And I'm so grateful for our work together.
Anybody want to personally wish her congratulations on her new adventure, and
Yeah,
say thank you for everything that you've done and your immense creativity.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
Thank you. It's been a privilege, and I don't think I won't see you all. So till later.
That's the nice part. You're still in town.
That's right. Okay, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again.
Thank you, Rachel.
Well, with that being said, we're on to the next item on the report for grant presentations. Are we staying in order?
No, that was the one that I mentioned at the beginning. We're moving
Right.
Deborah first.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Just wanted to double check.
Mhm.
Thank you. This is Deborah Larson from the Urbana Pops Orchestra to present the final report for the 2022 Urbana Arts Grant called Urbana Pops Orchestra Concert.
Let's see, my arrow. So although the grant was for this, to Urbana Pops Orchestra, was actually for this year, I'd like to start to tell you a little bit about last year, as we, like many art organizations, were trying to recover from the pandemic. In the fall of 2020, we canceled our recitals and made the decision that a summer 2021 concert wouldn't be possible due to COVID restrictions for the groups. And then suddenly, in the spring of 2021, you may remember, there was a window of opportunity when mask and group size requirements suddenly loosened. And we went, we might be able to do this. We decided that an outdoor concert might be more well-received, particularly by people who were still a little bit more uncomfortable about meeting indoors. So we created Pops in the parking lot with, that's Urbana Middle School in the background. That's where we're going to have it. And instead of meeting indoors. And we added a rain date just in case, which we have never done. We rehearsed in the Urbana Middle School band room, masked and mostly separated. But when the rehearsal week arrived, the forecast was for storms and excessively high heat. So we quickly pivoted. Thanks to our partnership with Urbana School District, Pops in the parking lot was able to move into the air-conditioned Urbana Middle School gym with the stipulation that everyone would be masked. This was before vaccinations were available for people under 18, and we needed to protect our youth musicians and our youth audience members. We still gave people popsicles, but on their way out of the building instead. We had already printed the programs. That's how late the pivot was made. And the change also meant completely re-promoting the event with the hopes that everyone got the news. It was a really fun concert that began with an original opening called Trotupo, which stands for The Return of the Urbana Pops Orchestra, and concluded with an encore of an original arrangement of Arrow's 1982 reggae hit, Hot, Hot, Hot. This is the one where the band sings, ole, ole, and they clap and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Thankfully, this year, what felt much more closer to normal, with vaccines available for youth and the masks optional. Pops on the Prairie was, with a couple of exceptions, a celebration of the Midwest, and in particular, Urbana. The concert opened with the conductor inviting the audience to stand if able and sing along using the words projected on the screen above the orchestra, while they played the Illinois State Anthem, By Thy Rivers Gently Flowing. A lot of the audience knew the tune, so it was really nice. And that was followed by a work by Aaron Copland with his quintessential Big Prairie Sky sound. After a pandemic year off, the Shambano Concerto composition was back in operation, so we were able to share an incredible performance by the winner, violinist Noel Chi, playing the first movement of Felix Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor. She was a senior at the time at Uni High School. And the Urbana Park District's Youth Summer Theater Festival was also back in business this summer. So we were able to showcase members from the cast in 2 selections from their show Newsies, which were especially arranged for full orchestra. The kind of music that comes with a musical that's going to be on stage is often arranged for 10 people who are playing 12 to 13 instruments. They switching off, like the flute players and reed players playing several instruments. So it's usually for a small orchestra or a combo. So this was arranged for full orchestra. Later in July, members of Urbana Pops Orchestra supported the entire cast in the pit orchestra at Parkland College for their 5 performances. Because we were able to return to our previous performance space this summer in Urbana High School's auditorium, Pops on the Prairie, as I said, made special use of the screen and projector, like that first song, making it an unusually visual concert. Principal conductor Stephen Larson created an animated flight through Urbana High School as it looked when it first opened to students in 1914. The orchestra played his original score entitled Tudor Fantasia as the audience watched the animation on the screen above the orchestra. It included flights through many of the hallways that still look the same today. But we also got to fly through the boiler room, a biology class with the cornfields outside of the windows, and a lab space with a science film in progress. And my personal favorite, the typing lab, which provides one example of the historical detail that went into this work. To the left of each typewriter, you can see a kind of a tablet. Larson found a copy of that original booklet and quoted a practice sentence that appears in cursive on the blackboard. So you're flying through here, and you can't really appreciate that kind of detail. But he poured through photos in the library and the archives and that sort of thing to recreate this exactly. One of the most thrilling moments of the piece was when the animation collided with reality. The 13-minute piece ends with the doors to the auditorium opening, the auditorium the audience was sitting in. Because much of the decor in the proscenium stage was restored in its recent remodel, we were virtually flying into the very auditorium we were sitting in. As you can see in the photo on the right, the actual crest above the animated crest on the screen. Tudor Fantasia was dedicated to the late Greg Chu, who directed over 100 plays on that very stage during his teaching career. And continuing with the celebration of Urbana, the final piece was an arrangement for orchestra of Urbana High School's first school song. It was written in 1915 by a couple of high school students. Stephen got a hold of whatever those two guys had written and orchestrated for orchestra. Before playing the final piece, Larson dedicated it to Urbana Middle School band instructor Karen DeBush, who retired at the height of COVID. And although she was given a drive-by parade, she missed out on a grand farewell that was planned for spring 2020. She was actually playing principal clarinet in the concert, so he asked her to stand and be recognized and then sit and play the piece. I hope this gives you a kind of a feel of the very original, creative, and personalized concerts Urbana Pops Orchestra brings to this community. It's not something you will experience anywhere else. Thank you for making it possible. I want to end with just a clip from Tudor Fantasia. I hope you'll be able to see the entire piece on Urbana Pop's YouTube channel whenever it's convenient for you. I just want to play like the first minute. So this is where we'll need the sound up. I can hear it, can you? You can? Okay. There's the blueprints. Portrait of Joseph Royer on the wall. That's the dining hall for the teachers. So you get the idea. And I don't know how to stop it.
I think you have to grab that button at the bottom.
Pressing
the blue
escape, but
button,
nothing's
grab it
happening.
over.
I'll
There
try
you
this.
go.
There we go.
There
You'll
you
have to
go.
watch it on your own sometime. I hope you will.
Yeah.
It's pretty spectacular.
Do you have
Any
any
questions?
questions or comments for Deborah?
I really love it, Deborah. My kids went to Urbana in public schools. I
Oh,
think it would
great.
be wonderful if you can share this with the school
I
in the
hope so,
beginning of the
too.
year somehow.
Yeah, I've made it available to the principal, and I will email it to him again now that it's on YouTube. It would have been wonderful to have the orchestra come and do an assembly where they actually did this for new students. I think they would be amazed, and maybe appreciate the building more for its historical significance. But that would be another $6,000 to get the orchestra together to do
Yeah.
that, so.
It's good. I'm going to send it to our son too, of course, because he went to Urbana High School.
Yeah, anybody who was there will recognize that terracotta tiling and the fact that they kept a lot of those same things in place.
Yeah, for sure. And I taught there too for a while.
And they almost tore
Yeah.
that down.
Oh, amazing.
That's what's really remarkable.
It's sad. You know, you mentioned Greg Chu. Did anyone here know Greg Chu? Because he was a member of our commission for a very short time before he passed away.
He did Art Now for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
He did Art Now for a while.
Yes.
He did one on
Right.
Urbana Pops
Right,
Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was very special.
Absolutely. Thank you again,
Oh, wonderful
Deborah.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Charlie Harris of Rose Bowl Tavern presenting the 2022 Urbana Arts Grant, Urbana Live. And Charlie, I believe it's just minimized down there, so you, your presentation. I didn't close it or anything.
Okay. I will refresh it. I made some edits during my little downtime over there. Let's see if those work. Pardon? I'm trying to, all right. Well, I didn't have those edits before, so if they don't show up, they don't show up. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie. I've met some of you, know some of you. So, this is it. We did it. We did, our main series was this, what we wound up naming Aftermarket. When I wrote the grant report, I was searching for a name to summarize what we were trying to do, but then sort of as we got into it and just creating a name with sort of appeal and sort of more direct branding, so to speak, we went with this Aftermarket. What it was is starting at noon every Saturday, May ongoing. We had bands and other organizations, collaborators, performers, events of different sorts, noon till some things going all the way till 2 a.m. when it's time for the bars to close. And people had to get out of the patio and all that. Yes, still ongoing. That is the case. Essentially, Rachel and I talked, and we've spent all the funding, which I'll get into in just a second, and just wanted to try to get some of this funding, the grant funding, to us to help us continue to do this, because as you'll find out, it's been a lot. So this was our approved budget at 85%. The budget we submitted via the application would have been 100%. For 10,000, we were getting 8,500, 85%, and so on. I did that calculation. This is what we spent as of July 26th, is the bottom number. So we definitely made up for matching funds and such. I don't know to what extent people comb through the expenses of the application and how that factors into y'all. I don't know. Not huge. So I had sort of divided what I kind of overdid it because of this being sort of my first grant application of this nature. And I took $10,000 and said, okay, what percent of this will be for promotion? What percent of this will be for artists? And I wound up with an admin fee of $1,133.33. So anyways, this all to say, if, I think the entire amount we had to spend, oh, here's that number, it was 28,000. We spent all of that just on actually doing the concerts. So between artists and production expenses, we spent all of that. Anyways, I guess I'd like to move on from that and tell you about what they were. Is this all good so far? Great. So Aftermarket, I already talked about that. Every Saturday, starting at noon, all sorts of different entertainment, and I'll kind of fly through that because that's at least three performers, performing acts every Saturday for what has already been 16 Saturdays. So I'll kind of go through a crash course on that. If you recall, the idea being to run the majority of this programming no cover at accessible times, Saturday over the course of this large window, which, you know, the majority of people are working Monday through Friday, Saturday being available. For people that do work Saturdays, sometime between noon and midnight, maybe they could make it over there over the course of a whole May through October. The idea being there's so much that it's accessible, right? That people can make their way over there. And primarily featuring local, regional acts. And here we go. I'm just going to kind of go through these at a pace that maybe you can just sort of get a feel. So these are like all our promotional materials. And this is, I'm going to speed it up at some point because it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Ah, okay. So there's all those. Some highlights I wanted to bring up was the kickoff week, which was back in May. That was really fun. So we had Carlos Vega, a local artist, and not only all these highlights, but I think it sort of is the quickest way to sort of summarize what we were doing without going through every event, right? So that one was cool. So we sort of featured this local jazz scene. Then we featured a collaboration with the university. Then we featured some like local kind of world music and rock bands. And then another sort of collaboration with the university with the Hip Hop Collective. And it was really fun for that to be our kickoff because it was like just so many different things, you know. And we saw a lot of different people. May 21st, I did a collaboration with, I believe Monique. Is it Monique? Monica at Spurlock? Monica Scott, right? So we did this blues event where we had a concert that referenced back to her blues exhibit. And this event, I don't know if she called her thing Elixir for the Soul, but I think Elixir for the Soul was her name, sort of flipping it because it was at the Rose Bowl where, you know, beverage service. You know. Anyways, I thought that was cool. June 11th, we collaborated with the C4A fiddle event, which you all are familiar with, right? And that was super cool. It was a whole day of, again, just like all ages, all sorts of different stuff, a performance. And then actually late night, we had a DJ do like sort of more folk, not folky, but like soul and kind of rock, more than like deep bass stuff to sort of like appeal to, I don't know how that went. I wasn't there for that to see what the dance party was like. June 25th, Bolokata Konde came back through town, if people are familiar with him. The Center for World Music when, oh geez, what was his name? Pre-Jason Finkelman. I can't think of his name. But anyways, Bolokata was in town maybe about a decade ago teaching djembe and folklore at the university. He rolled back through town and that was pretty special to get him to perform. And that same day, Jean Rene performed, so it was pretty cool to have two musicians from the continent of Africa both doing their styles. One, Jean Rene, if you're not familiar, is acoustic sort of gospel musician, and then Bulakata is a djembe master. So very different styles from the same continent, but very different. And then we also collaborated to create the Pride Market, which was no fee for vendors in Pride Month, and I think we had 12 vendors. And yeah, it was just sort of a flurry. I assume you're getting a feel for that. Like, we're just like, anyone that wants to do anything, let's do it, right? And it worked. July, we did Halloween in July, which was just a riot, and then Girls Rock. So I'll go through just some of these posters and images. Is this gonna work? So this is the Jean Rene concert. You know, so that's like, that was at noon, and so it's fun. Bulakata, on that same day as Bulakata. So this could go on and on. I'll just show little clips. And here's the market. So there's a jazz band playing during it. And I just sort of walk around. And anyways, here's Halloween in July. It was so fun. It was just a riot. So like all the tables in the patio had carved watermelons, and it was just ridiculous. So the collaboration with Girls Rock was phenomenal. So, do you all know Girls Rock? It's phenomenal. Yeah, amazing. Other highlights is, in addition to the Saturdays, which that was like the real meat of our project, another thing I was really excited about was getting touring bands, touring performers, national performers to, that's bringing outside creators into our community, right? For me and sort of my wheelhouse, that is with like sort of this, the touring band thing. It's a very specific lane, but with the grant funding and then the resources at the Rose Bowl, we were able to sort of do a little more than we have. So pretty cool bands. Emily Blue is a townie, grew up here, but that was fun to get her and her band from Nashville. Juan Waters, Uruguayan musician, and Mark Hummel from the West Coast. Other highlights, so other things that were collaborations that the funding was able to sort of bolster our ability to do things, whereas normally presenting arts, as we all know, is difficult. So, and for the Rose Bowl, generally there's like, oh, well, we have to worry about ticket sales, or we have to worry about beverage service, or this or that. But we're able to sort of do these new things because of the bolstering from the funding. Anyways, the Lyric Theater put on like a black box theater event. It was delightful. We ran on a Sunday, a full day of programming with Uniting Pride. They did drag story time and various other events. We worked with a bunch of local artists to do this Angie Heaton tribute. Angie Heaton was a songwriter that passed away a couple years ago, and all of these names are local artists. And the Dog Bowl. Yes, what is the Dog Bowl? I don't know. What is art? So we just threw a party for dogs in the parking lot, and it was totally packed. There were like 150 people and like 50 dogs, and it was a riot. Is that art? I don't know. Is that culture? Definitely. So that was really fun. So what I learned, trying to be like, I think big picture, what I learned is, I really think that the community is excited about a space, an available space to be. Having events, special events that activate spaces is a beautiful thing. Having a space where like almost at any time people can go and just like be, just be. Because like there's a lot of presenting art, but there's a lot of people being there for the ambiance of it more than like a real indulging in the fine craft of the art. Bringing people together as important as the cerebral part of experiencing art. That was kind of the biggest thing I saw through all of this. For me personally, I need to get into more grant writing, because it's a lot, you know, and there's no way to sell enough tickets or enough beverages to fund a constant stream of arts. Moving forward, we will definitely kind of continue as much as we can, given various resources, time and energy and money, to do programming that focuses on these times that are unique in this like sort of music venue situation, right? Normally, most cities, the music venues are sort of in the evening and they go kind of late, and in that way it's sort of exclusive. But we saw by essentially experimenting that like, well, people will come out at any time, you know? And so. Oh, right, what's next? Next slide. This Saturday is the next one. And then every Saturday through October, pending weather. Except we will move things inside. We've just been extremely lucky with Saturday weather. So this one will be cool. Los Texanos, recently, I don't know exactly when, but you featured them, right? You've done something with them?
I took that photo that you have right there.
Oh, perfect. Great.
I told them, I was like, I'm going to take more band photos of you guys while you're here, because they didn't have a lot of photos to provide when I booked them. But yeah, they played Culture Fest, which was our Boneyard Arts Festival contribution this past year at IMC. It was originally going to be in Boneyard Creek Crossing, but that was a very rainy, weird, windy weekend, so we moved it indoors. Mhm.
Yeah, so if you don't know them, they're super cool. They, Texas and I think northern Mexico individuals, and they play, what's it called? Do you remember what it's called? Tejano, yeah. Great, oh, it was so phenomenal. Bernie Sisters, a touring group. I think they're all in their teens, and they're just phenomenal. String band and harmony singers. Yep, and that's all that, and thank you.
Questions or comments for Charlie?
I think you've done such a great job with all of the programming, and I think that next year you should definitely think about, I think all of our tier 3 funding is usually happening on a course of like a couple days, and you're doing programming through the entire year, and so I think that you could definitely potentially get funding for more money to help you with more programming, because you're doing so much, and it's really been nice to be at the Rose Bowl for all of these different concerts, and I was just there for the Astronomy on Tap, so you're doing a lot of amazing events, and I'm glad that you applied for a grant.
Thanks.
What's the size of your staff when you? Sorry, what's the size of the staff that you worked with to make all this happen? Me, myself, and I?
No. So myself and Carrie Chandler did pretty much all of the programming and facilitation, logistics and scheduling. Myself, Kenna May, Jake Metz, Jimmy Myers, and maybe 2 or 3 other sound engineers. Generally, each day or each event was 1 or 2 people
Mhm.
from our side. But so interestingly enough, sort of tied into what Rachel was bringing up with like activating spaces. Our space, like there's been a full install to make it possible to do this. So while it is, no matter what, in the presentation of arts, it's a lot of work. There's no way around that because we have so much infrastructure installed and so many systems in place. It's about as easy as it can be. That doesn't mean it's easy, but yeah.
But you've built it and they are coming.
Yes, there's that. Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I mean, and you are the music venue of Urbana. I mean, that you are. So, and it's so wonderful to see how diverse, you have so many different things going on. I was wondering, grant writing's really hard, right? And having to do grant writing all the time. Can you think of a way, or we help you think of a way that can help you get more permanent funding over years rather than just like a year at a time? Because you are the heart of Urbana music scene. We've lost some unfortunate, bars and clubs in town, and you're pretty much it, and I don't know how, whether the city can do that, whether the state, Illinois Arts Council, is there a way to get something more permanent or more long-term, because you're it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All the kind of things people are saying, I really do. I don't know. I'm gonna, like I said, kind of the thing I need to learn, or what's next, is researching these things. So much of it, the timing is good for me personally, because I do have a team that I work with, whereas I haven't had that. So now I'm sort of moving into this, what I'll sort of call the next phase, which would be, okay, what opportunities to create a different level of sustainability,
So I wonder if there are other small cities that are doing something like this. You can learn from them. If that's a possibility.
I just want to say, I think you're seeing very much the fruits of your labor since the change in ownership at the Rose Bowl, yours and the rest of the owners. It's really clear to me how much has grown. And for anyone that doesn't perhaps have as much of context, I feel, the Rose Bowl has a long history of being like our country music bar, our country music location. And you've really expanded what's possible, not ever, doing away with its roots, but really growing it in new and diverse ways. I mean, to be a location where you can get all ages programming because of the addition of outside, that's huge, and that wasn't without some struggle, right? And so I think that the support that the city has now come to give, and that Rose Bowl has been able to advocate for, of having the use of that parking space, which, for anyone that doesn't remember, went also to RFP and invited, others to apply. I think Rose Bowl was the one applicant to use the space, but there's like that in and of itself begs a lot of bigger questions about how the downtown can make use of public spaces that are city owned and operated, but could be used as activation spaces. And I'm just really pleased that it also has afforded even more all ages accessibility, place for people, as you pointed out, who are immunocompromised in a pandemic to go and enjoy themselves. But even things like the investment in different kinds of branding. I mean, I've just seen the fruits of all of this really develop. And so I want to like sing your praises about that, and knowing that, you know, it is musicians themselves, it is people in the scene working also in ownership of the Rose Bowl, that shows. You know, you brought up Los Tejanos, but I booked them because you recommended them, and I had picked Charlie's brain as somebody I know who does a lot of booking, you know, for different bands in the area, and it was one on the list. So, and when they had come back, this was, you know, they're also, and they're from surrounding towns, but they're not from Champaign-Urbana direct. So coming and doing more things in Champaign-Urbana is very desirable for them, because for many people in surrounding towns, we're the hot city with the big scene, you know, we're the one that has maybe a little bit more venues and a little bit more things to do. So it's very exciting, and I think like you see the fruits of that a lot. And then I just, you know, I have to, I think the approach that I have seen be valuable in my own thinking that I see happening at the Rose Bowl, and I'm sorry to take up so much time, but this is my last meeting, so you're going to get an earful for a second, but is that, you know, when we think about designing diverse spaces and actually designing for inclusion, so often organizations that, you know, are predominantly white organizations, we spend a lot of time saying, how can we attract more and more people with the existing programming, that like not changing anything about what we do. And what I value about this approach is, rather than say, hey, we've got this long tradition of like folk and country music happening at this bar, how do we attract more people from all walks of life to that? It's, I'm going to make a space that has programming that speaks to the needs and interests of so many different populations. You know, not everyone who comes for drag story time or pride adjacent events is going to come for, you know, this other type of event you're having, but to be able to collaborate with all the existing festivals, and the Rose Bowl continues to be a venue we see over and over again on arts grants. It's showing up in a similar way as the Independent Media Center and the library do. You know, these organizations in town that actually serve as venues that have repeat programming going on, and then end up being venues on all of our festivals that we fund as well. I mean, you even mentioned Fiddle Weekend, which is a new Tier 2 grant that we funded this past cycle with C4A. And then all of your work with young people. I mean, you wouldn't typically see a bar engage young people, but being able to pave the way for more all ages programming in a way that is accessible through C4A, Mo Better Blues, like, you know, so many different programs I've seen happen there. I'm just really delighted to see the work that's happening, and I think it's a model for other organizations to think about opening up space for more to be happening. And I want to also just say that as it continues to grow, be looking at, and I want to also say, you have some grant experience now, not just from this, but from the Arts Corps grant you received as well. That's fabulous. And some of the other things. Yeah, with Jake. Yeah.
Big strong-handed that, but
Well, I know both of you now as grant writers. So the thing that I'll encourage, which I always say to all people who write grants, is once you have one grant, it actually becomes easier to get more, especially given that you have the pieces that you often need to generate to apply for grants. You know, the description of your organization, the budgetary information, all of that kind of in place will make it a lot easier. So be looking for Illinois Arts Council grants, look for other both state and national grants, but even private, you know, type of grants too. I think that you've seen before, like those are especially a good way to go in addition to the arts and culture grant program. So great job. That's my 2 cents.
Thank
My
you very much.
$2.02.
thank y'all.
Yeah, of course. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jake Metz presenting the 2021 Urbana Arts Grant Immersion, a multidisciplinary experimental arts festival. Oh, you're good. Do we still have Shea here as well? Oh, there you are. See, I
She
didn't
is
mean to
here.
skip over you. I thought you actually moved rooms. Okay, you're after Jake.
Is it you?
I know. Take your time.
We'll vouch for you, it's you.
I don't believe it. Two-factor authentication. Okay, great.
Actually, you might need to press it.
Hello, there we
There you
go. Hi, everybody. I'm Jake. As you can see, this was for Immersion Festival 20, crossed out 20, and into 21. I think you can all probably imagine why that got crossed out, and we moved to a different year. So this was the second year of the Immersion Festival. Some of you were on the Arts Council for round one. Some of you were not, but as I did last time, I'm just gonna play a little recap video first, and then I'll do some talking. Oh, that's not how you do that. Not gonna do it.
As Charlie did, lean your mic towards it.
This is very hard for a sound engineer to do.
Oh, yes, I remember this.
No. Come on. It's cruel. Yeah, that's a familiar tent.
She's having a good time.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. You can see that image again here. All right, so. Yes, Immersion Round 2. So, the first version of the festival was in 2019, and we hosted that in the IMC as a 2-day event in one venue. Talk a bit about challenges and why we chose to do this, but for this version of Immersion, we did it all in one day, and we spread the activities across 3 different venues. Mainly that was to provide perhaps a place so that we didn't concentrate all of the audience in one place at one time. It was a strange time for all of us trying to put on events, decide what was safe and how much we wanted to actually bring people together, even though that's exactly what we wanted to do, was bring people together. So we hosted this Saturday, August 28th of 2021. We started at the Rose Bowl Tavern. And out there, Charlie let me indulge myself and change the sound system so that we could have surround sound, quadraphonic sound in the tent. And there we had some experimental drum and electronics music. We had a version of the Improvisers Exchange, which perhaps some of you are familiar with. It's a group of people who gather and do improvised music, usually a set with the kind of official group, and then afterward invite audience members to come and improvise along as well. And then we had world beat music, and then late night we had surround sound music playback. Because if you don't know, all the music that's out there is not just produced for stereo speakers. There have actually been many albums. I have collected 10,000-ish songs of music that's actually been recorded for surround sound. And so we were DJing some of that so people could hear music in this different format. And one that I believe is a very much going to be the way most music is at some point in the future. Then we had an outdoor event at the SIP Yard, and this was the culmination of an event that myself and some of the other production crew of Immersion hosted during the summer called Soundscapes. I'll talk a bit more about that, but we had some solo violin, we had spoken word, we had a modular synthesizer artist from Madison come into town, then we had a local experimental jazz fusion world beat group. And finally, at the Urbana Dance Co., it was our single indoor event, and we had the windows wide open and as many fans going as possible because it was hot. And there we had a large-scale projector installation, again with surround sound, and we had some amplified solo vibraphone performance. We had experimental quadraphonic electronic music, and then a DJ who DJs, again, some of music that you normally wouldn't hear from a DJ. I think Charlie used the word deep bass before, and that's not what this was either. Challenges and changes. I struggled a lot to figure out how to pull this festival off the second time around for two reasons. The first reason is COVID happened, and that I don't think I need to go on at length about why that was challenging. Suffice it to say, it was challenging to figure out how to keep doing public arts during that pandemic. And yeah, big props to Charlie, who just left, for keeping that tent going. He and I sat down the day the lockdowns went into effect and said, how do we keep doing things in this town to keep the arts alive? And through his wherewithal mostly, it's kept going, but I've been happy to participate with it. And then the other challenge that I faced for the second iteration of Immersion was living up to what we were able to pull off with the first iteration of Immersion. I learned a lot from that first festival, namely that it got a lot bigger than I thought it would and cost a lot more money and took a lot more labor. That festival probably ended up costing 3 times what I thought it would, and I funded most of that out of pocket and relied on a lot of volunteer work from people. And so this time around, I wanted to rely on less volunteer work. I wanted to make sure that more of the budget was going to support the people working, and not that the folks who volunteered were strong-armed. I think they were all very happy, just as I would, to volunteer lots of time, but I wanted to find a way to make it more sustainable. However, the plan was to go and get sponsorships and get private funding and get donations and do more with having suggested donations at a door. And when COVID hit, all those plans kind of went out the window. There weren't a lot of people willing to give money for a festival during that time, and sponsorships were hard to find. You know, it was a hard time to find money for anything. Everybody was getting hit pretty hard by the pandemic. So I decided to change the festival a bit for the second round and scale back the ambitions, while hopefully still living up to the spirit of Immersion Festival, which is to present these kind of technology-enhanced and experimental arts that we don't see in a lot of the other programming in town, at least historically and traditionally. There have been a few one-off events. Charlie mentioned Jason Finkelman earlier. I know he did some things in the very early 2000s that are things that certainly inspired me. So along with that, I wanted to figure out how we could keep up this spirit of immersion and bringing people together to be immersed as we change and activate these spaces with projectors and speaker installs, while still navigating the challenges of the pandemic. So as I mentioned before, we started outdoor at the Rose Bowl Tavern. One interesting thing for me here, you can see down in the bottom pane, there's one of our sound engineers, Frank Horger, and it was fun for me because this time around I was stretched too thin, and last time I wore the organizer and technical director and sound engineer and video engineer hat. And this time I tried to, the pandemic taught me to be kinder to myself maybe. And so I leaned more into hiring some other sound engineers to participate, and what was fun was Frank was one of the performers along with the artists. He was doing live mixing in this immersive context with quadraphonic sound for the first time. So I showed him, and he's a talented sound engineer, but he got to kind of learn on the fly and experiment with how traditional sound engineers can start to work in these new formats. So that was really rewarding for me, and it was also really rewarding at this point in the pandemic to have the tent turn into a giant dance party at the end of the night. It was great. Soundscapes at Sipyard. This was, as I mentioned, a whole event series that myself and two of the other technical staff at Immersion had been putting on all summer at the Sipyard. And so with this, we had, I don't know, this was for the Immersion iteration of Soundscapes. I went a little crazier, so I think we had 12 or 14 projectors blanketing all the walls of the Sipyard in live video art provided by 3 different video artists, myself and 2 others. And then I had probably 14 speakers and 3 or 4 subwoofers spread throughout the alley, and that is a little bit different. If you we'll talk a bit later about this dome that I built for the first Immersion, which was a multi-speaker installation. That was meant to make people feel like they were within a different sound world, where in this iteration what I was exploring was how do we use multi-speaker installations to transform a place so that the music and sound kind of permeates the whole environment. So as you move through it, it seems like it's coming from everywhere and nowhere. And I like doing that a lot because of the way that it changes the environment and makes you feel like you're in this surreal space. But also, more practically, it helps if you just have 2 speakers at the end of an alley or at the front of a stage. You have it very loud to make it sound nice everywhere, where in this context, all of the volume can be kind of at a lower level, but it still seems very present everywhere. So if you haven't experienced this, come out to some of the events that we're doing soon, and you can. Yeah, so there's we transformed the inside of a shipping container into this whole immersive art control room, and yeah, had the aforementioned speakers and projectors all the way down the alley. And that was great. It was really great. That alley got very packed, so it was a nice culmination of that series for the summer. And then finally, we did this installation that we ran kind of all day, I think we started at 4 or 5 p.m. and ran it until almost midnight, where there were projectors all throughout the Urbana Dance Company studio, and people could come in and kind of play around and dance in front of them and see the way that they could interact with these projections. And that venue we tried to limit the amount of people in at any time and kind of keep it so it was wide open and open air. And I would say of the 3, that was the least attended, and I think it's probably because it was indoors at a time that people still weren't quite sure. We were having the rise of Delta and scared some people off. But we all had a great time, and one thing about this was we had a suggested donation at the door, and it went to a benefit organization that one of our collaborators had set up called Without a Trellis, which is to raise money for farmers, local farmers and small farms impacted by I would say freak weather events, but perhaps less freak weather events, events that we can all look forward to over and over in the future. So I think, this time around, instead of working at one venue, but spreading around and partnering with multiple venues and multiple spaces in downtown Urbana, while it didn't allow me to spend as much time making the technology in one space as immersive as I would have liked, it gave me a good model for the future of how to activate more of downtown into a coherent event. And it was nice, certainly with this show at the Urbana Dance Company, to look at ways that when we throw these events, we can partner with other organizations to perhaps benefit them in a financial way. So, what's next for Immersion Festival? Well, I'll talk about all this stuff in a second, but actually what's next for Immersion Festival is this, not this weekend, but next weekend, August 18th, 19th, 20th. There is another version of Immersion, and that'll again be at the Rose Bowl Tavern, at NOLA's, and in the Cohen Building. So Thursday night, Friday night, and then Saturday all day during the day. I'm particularly excited about the event on Saturday at the Cohen Building. I think it's a great spot. I really want to see it activated more. And what we're going to have there is not a show per se, but I'm going to set up some of my equipment and some other musicians' equipment to create an interactive sound gallery where people can come, and we're going to start in the morning at 10 a.m., so hopefully we capture some people coming from the market, and I hope that some kids come through and younger people to show them, hey, here's some different music technology that you can use to create sound in a way that, you know, you don't have to, it's more immediate. It's a little faster than learning an instrument, which you know, I think learning instruments is great. I've learned many instruments. But I think sometimes these more accessible interfaces hook people with the joy of music and the joy that hey, I can do something. I'm able to create this. And that may lead into some energy for them to put more focus in learning instruments or taking more time honing that craft as they get older. So that's what's coming next, but then what's coming next, which is probably next year for Immersion, is a lot of cool things, namely this giant dome. So one thing that happened while we had a pause where we were a year off and then we worked on the 2021 version and several other events is this collective, this arts collective who is very interested in these sorts of events, has really coalesced more. And I think the first version of Immersion activated that in a lot of people's minds. And I had people reaching out to me and wanting to get involved in these sorts of immersive art forms. And so through that, we've done several events this past year. A lot of these photos are from another time we activated the Cohen Building for something called Submerge. And that was part of the Boneyard Arts Festival. That was really a lot of fun. As I said, we've been doing these series now at NOLA's rock bar called Luma City, and that's actually two of the collaborators on Immersion are really running with it themselves, which is great. This was one of my goals early on in doing these festivals is I wanted to inspire people and then hopefully teach people some of the technology that is used and then have them go and start doing their own things, because there are certain amount of hours in the day, and I work full-time, and I'm doing a PhD, so I have less than I want. So that's been really heartening and inspiring to me, and I hope that as we continue to do these events, I'll see these sorts of art forms proliferate more in this town, and part of that will be coming up soon. I'll be here presenting to you again in a little while as the results of a workshop series that I'm currently undertaking to directly tutor and teach people in the sorts of technologies that I use for immersive sound and immersive light art forms. But yeah, finally, this dome is the first dome. We put it in the IMC, and it was about 20 feet wide and 9 feet tall. This one is an outdoor dome that we're prototyping currently, and it's about 30 feet in diameter and 16 feet tall. And it'll be equipped with all weatherproof speakers, so there'll be somewhere between 18 and 36 speakers attached to it at some point. And my hope is to be deploying it in downtown Urbana sometime next season when the weather gets nice again and we all want to be outside. So look forward to that. And long-term, my goals for Immersion are to continue to grow it and grow the funding models for it so that I can support bringing in artists from outside the community as well to perform. And there are a lot of practitioners in these new emerging immersive art forms all around the world, and I have a network with them from my participation in being tech director for festivals elsewhere and things. And when I put out a call for the first Immersion Festival, I was blown away at the amount of artists from all over the world and all over the country who saw that we were building this infrastructure and creating a venue for this sort of performance art, and wanted to come to Urbana. And I had to tell them, well, I'm sorry, this was kind of a local thing. I don't really have any funding for stipends to help you travel or stay here, but that's a goal that I'm working for with this festival in the future. Is that going to happen next year? Probably not, but my goal is to keep doing this, and hopefully by the time we get to 2024 or 2025, have enough of an infrastructure for the festival that we can bring in some really amazing practitioners, while providing this infrastructure for local people to experiment with as well. So, questions?
Yeah, kind of work. I have a question. Is that Kayla Shaney in the bottom picture?
In
On
which
your
one?
cello?
No, that's
Who's that?
Briar Schlenker.
Oh, yes, never mind.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, Briar's been a wonderful musician to
right, and he's a
see.
composer.
Yeah, grow into wonderful cellist, but now doing all sorts of crazy extended technique and
Yeah.
blended cello and electronics, and it's really neat.
Now, Jake knows much more about this than I, but the School of Music and its, what do we call it, experimental
EMS,
music.
Experimental Music Studios.
Music Studios is very unique to our campus, but also it's on the Urbana side of the campus, which not everything always is. So, Urbana is home to the Experimental Music School, and now Jake has joined their doctorate program and
Oh, great.
specializing.
Not on the EMS. I'm in the informatics program for
Right.
arts and cultural informatics, but I do collaborate with the head of the EMS and amongst others there. So.
And continuing to grow your work and research around experimental music and arts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's been great, and I'm trying to roll that into what's going on with immersion, and I hope to draw. I had experience this past year, as you mentioned, with the Arts Corps grant, and that was really neat. It was cool to see how I could leverage my position within the university to help draw some of its vast resources into the community to support the arts. And that's certainly what I'm thinking about for future versions of immersion. And I've started talking to Krannert Center about potentially doing some crossover as well. So.
And that Arts Corps grant is the same university grant that sponsored Disability Aware Cities for us. So we, Rose Bowl, and I think one other, because yours was on sort of with Rose Bowl,
Yep,
right?
it was to form the virtual performance.
And there was
commons.
another that also benefited Urbana directly. So that was really exciting to see that this vice chancellor for something or other sponsored grant program ended up sponsoring a number of arts-related programs in Urbana, specifically because we are home to so many venues for the arts.
Yeah, and that's, as someone brought up before when they were asking how there can be more funding, recurring funding for the arts, I think figuring out ways to leverage the university, and certainly if the Arts Council here is funding things, to try and work with the university for match or something, or I think there's a lot of room in the future to get the university to participate more in the local community. There's a lot of folks within the university who want that to happen, and
Yeah, I think that's a really wise suggestion, and I don't think it's really been explored very much in around cash matching with the university. The times we've done it, it's been very specific. So for instance, with the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, they would occasionally give around a $500 donation towards arts grants to support a Latin American or Caribbean focused project. And so we've had that happen in the past, but I think outside of CLACS, I'm not sure that we've had another organization per se directly sponsor. But it paved the way for that being possible, and it is possible for the arts program to accept donations specifically to support the grant program.
Did the Japan House contribute anything, or I know they had festivals? I'm trying to
No, they were
remember.
actually funded by our
yeah.
program for a while. And theirs is an interesting case because they have part of their land is county land and part is on city, it is within city limits, and we only fund
on
what's within
campus.
city limits. So
Right.
going forward, if they're funded, they have to make sure it's on this side of their lawn, in order to qualify. So it's an interesting thing. But I wanted to just, give you some praise for not only pursuing this. I do have a question, of course, about the dome. When we think about the future, obviously the dome is going to be a big piece of it, and I'm curious if and where you're considering erecting it, and if that will also be in Urbana.
Yes, I mean, so that's again, as I said, doing Immersion Festival and doing these events has brought together this group of collaborators, and that's part of another collaboration that we're looking at, where we're building this to be something that can be easily transported. And so, yeah, I mean, my hope, I'd love to put it in like the Lincoln Square Mall parking lot. That seems like an underutilized space. So that may be able to work. There's also some private businesses that have places that I may work with. And yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestion if anyone.
In the Park District.
Yeah.
So you're looking at potentially like a paved area versus a park area?
It doesn't matter. It can go in either
Like a green
location.
space.
I mean, power is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's certainly,
Power is very important,
Yeah.
not just important,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
imagine the amount of like circuits and things that you need would be greater than
Yeah,
even what
and
we would use on a typical.
we're
moment.
working on some more permanent space too in downtown Urbana that
Yeah.
is not really, there's not enough official information yet, but
Yeah.
hopefully there will be more permanent space for these sorts of exhibitions.
And accessibility
Coming
for
soon.
the public, of course, too.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about that's why I decided to transition to making this outdoor dome, was to make it more accessible. And actually, that was directly spurred by the pandemic. And my plan initially was to be able to build and get this deployed for the version of Immersion that I just presented on, but that proved to be too ambitious. So that said, I'm very happy. We're actually debuting it this weekend out in Sydney, Illinois. So dome coming soon to a parking lot near you.
Well, we appreciate the futuristic element of this work, the combination of music and technology, and can hope it continues, and certainly hope it continues in Urbana. So thank you
Sure.
again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Shea Robinson presenting the final report for the 2020 Urbana Arts Grant STAR, A Journey of Self-Love. Yeah. Do you need any assistance, Shea? Okay, no problem. For future reference, when I'm not here, UPD, I'm sure, has been appreciating it, but you can just love that usually like people, you want to give somebody privacy, they get into their email and something.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure to plug it back in. Right, for a little, we'll come back on.
Yeah, ideally, if they could come and always have it already set up even before the meeting starts, saves
Yeah.
time in the meeting, and then they have a little more protection as well.
Of course, that's helpful, but sometimes when folks can't all come to the meeting.
Right.
Our meetings are also long.
Yeah.
That's good for, thank you. There used to be a pet, I don't know if there's a pet, but it's pretty hot. You know.
So like on Zoom, yeah. Can we get Jake to come to the Lake House on the 20th of August? Do something special for us. I'd like to invite you all to the Lake House program, the Candlelight Serenade, on August 20th at the Crystal Lake Park Lake House at 8:30 p.m.
Sponsored by the Arts Program and the Park District, and the few symphony artists get together.
So it's this quartet from the symphony, not the whole symphony. But that'd be kind of cool, having certain projections behind.
Trying to do some uplighting of the trees out there that night.
Well,
Oh, that'd be pretty.
Projections work great.
Yeah, I don't, we'll talk.
That Bannon Keith thing also, come back and talk to her when if there's any opportunity for like subcommittee work or something around projections. She told me this yesterday, so I'm gonna call her out because she loves that work.
Oh, really? Good.
And she sponsored
The Rose Bowl.
the Rose Bowl mural.
Yeah.
And
I
she
wanna
has
work-
indicated she'd like to continue to support the arts program on an ongoing basis with her
That's great.
donation each year.
That's nice.
So something to remember for next
Yeah.
year.
Well, that's the second commissioner that's funded something, because Virginia Waller and her husband sponsored the Friends, Meeting Friends at the library, that statue that you, on the south side. Stranger Reduction, thank you, yes.
Oh.
That's true, and that was Jack and Ginny Waller sponsoring.
Yeah.
That
She was on
piece.
this commission for a while
Mhm.
also.
Hello, everybody. My
Hello,
name is
welcome.
Shaya Robinson. How are you all tonight? I will try to make this fast. I know we've all been at work all day. Me and Stacey Robinson created the version of Stargazers, which is a part of this grant that I wrote. It kind of started from when I was a kid. I used to journal a lot as a child. Through hard times, through good times, through all of the times, I used journaling as a form of healing. And so I really wanted to create this story about a little brown girl who is using her journal and being able to really heal herself through any of the things that she's going through, whether it's bullying, whether it's, family issues or anything, and be able to really have that sort of a space. It was really hard to get this project going with COVID. I kind of switched jobs, and I went from art mode to I have to help my community mode. And so it was really difficult for me to kind of get the creative juices flowing and really be able to kind of push this project the way that I needed to, because the world around me was on fire and I was trying to put those fires out. But I am happy that I was able to get with the Urbana Free Library and create just one event, and it was family friendly. There were adults coloring and kids coloring, and it was just such a cool event. I just have a few pictures from the event, and we can just kind of talk about some of the things that happened while we were there. So this was the flyer that was created for the event. It was during Juneteenth, which was really cool to be able to create this sort of image of Black girl and in the midst of, the Juneteenth festival. So it was really beautiful to be able to have that. Me and Stacey were really happy that the Urbana Free Library were able to get us in there. This is when we were getting ready to just put up a lot of the images. I was just kind of taking a look at them, trying to figure out what order we were going to put them up in, because I think that's also important when you're putting up pieces, is making sure that they all kind of flow, but they're all a little different, making sure color schemes and stuff. So we just kind of laid them out and just took a look at, how we wanted to get those pictures put up. This is a lady, as I was kind of looking through, she stopped by and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. I've worked with kids for a long time. They would love these images." And we had just this really beautiful conversation around the idea of, what I wanted to do with this project and how I wanted to create this so that all young kids really could see themselves in this story, but also utilize some of those same tools of being able to journal through some of the hard times. I journaled a lot during COVID. It was a rough time for me, so. And then these were the coloring pages that we created from the actual images that were up in the art exhibit. It was kind of a last minute idea. I was just like, how beautiful would it be for people to be able to take home coloring pages of this same sort of art exhibit, and they can make it whatever color they want and look like whatever they want. And so we created those, and it was actually a really big hit. I did not know how much adults and children and everybody in between loved to color, but I think that was like the hit of the thing. It was like everybody was silent, and they were just all coloring their pictures and really excited to take some home and share with friends and stuff like that. So it was really exciting to be able to offer those to the community. And actually, we're having a back-to-school event at Cunningham Township this weekend, and they asked if we can print more of these coloring pages for the kids to be able to take home with them. So, and these are the people, some of the people that were there at the event coloring, if you can kind of see in the background, right next to the art exhibit. And so being able to get some creativity from the art exhibit while also being able to, you know, come up with their own ideas of what the picture should look like was really cool. This is Sam Smith coloring, as like I said, people of all ages was, you know, out there coloring multiple pages. Some more of the people kind of viewing the exhibit in the back, and then more kind of coloring in the front. And this was after we did a little bit of an exhibit downstairs. I did a little bit of poetry. We talked a little bit about the event. And this was just like the gathering stage after. I love to host, so it was really nice that the library allowed us the opportunity to sit there and kind of conversate with people, because the big thing around this event is I wanted to know from the community, what's your favorite painting out of all of these pictures? And, you know, what resonates with you? And have you ever written in a journal when you were going through a happy or a sad time? And so I just utilized that as a chance to kind of gauge my community and what sort of art they're into, and what they would like to see in their community. And I will say that there was these two nurses that came, and they talked about how a lot of the kids that they work with aren't able to leave the hospital. And so being able to have journals for them, you know, in the hospital, and being able to kind of write through that. And it was beautiful to have that conversation with her, because that was my dream. It's like, I want kids in whatever state that they're in to be able to have these sort of items. So, you know, we'll talk about what's next for Stargazers and this sort of idea, but it was nice to be able to have that. It really makes me think kind of further into the future about what I can create with these images and with this story. And this is just more of the crowd kind of after having a conversation. We did have an iPad out as well, besides the coloring pages, if people wanted to learn how to sketch on some of those sketching sites. And Stacy was the master of that, because I am not great at working some of the technology. And this is me just kind of standing in between two of those pictures. I don't know if you can notice, but a lot of the images were kind of created and based off of pictures of me as a kid. And so being able to stand next to a picture that looks like me as a kid was really cool. And if you look on this one, some of the writing in the back is actually just some of the stuff that I added to some of these images. Some of them are poems that are on there. Some of it is just you know, writing, and I wanted to be able to have a mixture of not just paintings, but also poetry and writing within the artwork. And this is who I collabed with. Stacy was the illustrator of this project. He's amazing. I am so grateful for him. He really pushed me to learn a lot about, you know, the programs that he uses to draw and paint. He had me coloring a lot of the paintings, which was really cool, because we were able to kind of do this together. Some of what I learned was that, you know, during difficult times, it's okay that creativity is slow, and it's important to take care of yourself if you need to. Utilize the resources and connections that are around you. We have a big, beautiful arts community here, and just utilizing the people that are here to kind of help push your art, I think, is really important. And people love the idea of writing as a form of healing. That was one of the things that I knew personally was a thing, but for me to be able to see that there are so many other people in the world that want to do it if they haven't, or people that have been writing for years as a sense of healing. So I want to just give a big thank you to Rachel. I have messaged her last minute, and you know, I've driven her crazy, and she really did help me kind of pull this project together. I've never written a grant before. I've never had to do, you know, all of the steps, and she really did walk me through that. I want to thank the Urbana Arts and Culture Program, for allowing me the opportunity, being patient with me, and just being able to show my work in Urbana has been a really great experience for me. And, you know, for the future, I hope that this art exhibit, as well as, you know, potentially a book in the future, and, you know, a couple of pencils and, you know, journals and stuff that we can get out to kids so that they can also start that form of healing. I think it's kind of my longer term goals for this. But right now, you know, I'm really happy with what we have created, and right now I'm just in the thinking stages of where we can take it next. Any questions?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a great first step.
Comments for Shea?
It's a great first step. I can see all sorts of possibilities with animes and maybe, you know, a series.
Yeah, I
you
would
know.
love to write a
You've
book.
got
I would love to be able to
identifiable
create.
character. It's great.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to create kind of like not just a coloring book, but like a multi-activity book that has coloring, that has, you know, some spaces for drawing, that has, you know, all different writings and stuff in there, a little bit of encouragement that we can give out to kids. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but I think, you know, a few pages that gets the idea kind of rolling, then these kids can create their own books and they can create their own journals. You know, it just takes a few minutes and a little bit of creativity. So I really want to utilize this to impact the youth of Urbana, and I am actually going to be a part of Writers of Oya, so I'll actually be utilizing some of the things that I've done with Stargazers and some of the concepts in a more actual way with the girls coming this fall. So I'm really excited. Hopefully I'll see you all around at some of that.
Super.
I have a couple of things to share too. I want to encourage you as you think about growing this work in the ways that you've stated, you know, maybe developing a coloring book or a children's book or any number of things. Do consider arts grants to help you in the next phase of that work. It's not uncommon that people apply for an arts grant. I mean, even the Writers of Oya's, as one of Ashanti Fowles' projects, it began as one iteration, then it was, let's fund it again for a second year, then it was, we want to produce an audio book, you know, and so it was like, there's ways that, you know, fresh eyes on a new project, you know, it's sometimes difficult for the same project to get funded many, many years, but for a project to continue to grow, to maybe shapeshift and take new forms, or, you know, to produce a book or something like that, those are certainly eligible projects for Urbana Arts Grants. So do consider applying for a grant for the next phase of that project. And then I just, you know, I want to emphasize something that you're humble enough not to have emphasized, but one of the things that I valued about you, and honestly everyone who's presented tonight, is that every person has also been heavily involved with the arts program over the last few years. So Shea has hosted our Open Scene Open Mic. Shea has worked with our Youth Poet Laureate and our Poet Laureate, as well as presenting, you know, presenting her poetry at various Poet Laureate, and most recently the Youth Poet Laureate's just recent Open Mic. You obviously manage Speak Cafe and have done a phenomenal job with that. Ever since it was born of Carol and Aaron Ammons' dreams, you've carried that dream and that baton forward so well. So, you know, I just also appreciate all of the ways that you've been involved with the arts program, and I hope it continues. And you and the other folks who presented this evening, they all have these connections much more broadly to the bigger scope of work that we do, and I'm just so grateful that you've been involved to this level, and I hope that you continue to ask for support from our program for your own work, since you've participated so often in the things that we do as well.
I love the Urbana Arts and Culture Program. I will always love it. You know, I think being able to, like, just going outside and being able to see murals and, you know, live music and arts festival all the time is just, it really builds this community up in a different way. And so being able to see it grow and grow and grow has been a beautiful, which is why I'm like, yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do this, because I really believe in the arts in this community. And there's so many people out here that just want a chance to be able to do their thing too. And so the more we kind of foster that, I think the more we'll have amazing art for years to come.
Well, and you said it right when so many people during the pandemic, especially independent artists, felt that they had to take a step back from their work, or it was really hard to think about their work in the context of surviving and getting through so many other things. And you pivoted very much, joining the staff of the township to really do a lot of direct support for people in the community. But you also kept arts alive in that context. Like, we've done so many arts projects that Shea has been a part of, specifically at township. So I just really value your impact in the arts community. It's very felt.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else, you guys? I know you're ready to go home.
Thank you so much
Well,
again,
thank you,
Sarah.
guys. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you.
Our last piece of business is just a new business item that I feel comfortable sitting here to present to you, unless you want me to go over there. Okay. I'm just going to take this off so you can hear me a little better. So our last business item was an update on interim planning of the Arts and Culture Coordinator position. And our plan was to have a different city staff member come and present on that, which is Economic Development Supervisor Stephanie McMahon. Stephanie unfortunately has come down with COVID, so she's out. And so I'm going to just share what I know in place of that. She did let me know that the intention is to post this position within the next few weeks. So hopefully, like before the September meeting, it would be posted. Obviously, I'm not sure how long that process will take between it being posted and filling the position. And I do know that at some of our other public meetings and conversations, it has been, shared that the city has a backlog right now of positions to be filled. So its priority will also be impacted by the priorities of these other positions too. So that's something to just make sure you're sort of staying aware of. And then at the September meeting, which Stephanie will be that person that it becomes a contact right now for the arts program in general until the position is filled. So I did notify all arts grant recipients that they can contact Stephanie McMahon before, beginning earlier this evening, I sent my away message in my email, and a lot of those internal workings have all been shifted over to Stephanie, and then it'll also indicate in my emails now that you'll be reaching out directly to her. So that goes for anybody with inquiries about the arts program, but also our commission. I believe that she will be the person who will be sort of here as the staff person for the September meeting and potentially those meetings moving forward. But again, she has a full-time position, so there's just going to be probably a little bit of shared support among staff for making those things happen. But that her hope was to give a more formalized report on the status and the plans of that hiring process in September. So you'll get that as a continued agenda item. And she'll also be the person that sets up the grant reports and things like that for grant presenters. I want to share from my perspective a few recommendations that I would love to give the commission in thinking about this position and how it's worked with the commission. Over the years, there's been lots of shifts with this position. I mean, not only when it was first started was it like volunteer for a second, then it was part-time, then it was a full-time position. It's obviously changed quite a bit. But there have been times, and Barbara, you can attest to this, where being on the commission since its inception, where there have been like subcommittees or other kinds of like working groups or things like that. I do think that this is a moment for the commission to be involved to your capacity, whatever you're able to do. If there's ways for you to participate on a jury or come out to an event or come, talk about a program or something, this is a great opportunity to get more involved than perhaps just the meetings. And I know many of you already are, but that's just an emphasis from me. And then as the position is not only crafted, but that person is hired and then they come to work with arts commissioners, I would certainly encourage you to meet with that arts coordinator once they're selected. Talk to them about your ideas for the program. I will obviously have all past annual strategic planning. We haven't done any recently. We have a lot of new commissioners, so hopefully you'll bring your own ideas as well. But I'll be sharing and leaving, of course, behind lots of files for that person to go through that denote some of our past strategic planning meetings. If you're interested in looking at how we've done strategic planning before, we used to do it kind of around January, and we didn't do it this past year. But there is, if you look at our past January meetings, because they're all public and they're all recorded, you could actually see some of the past strategic planning meetings we've had. But I just generally would really value and want to let you know some of the things that have been helpful for me Like I said before, relationship building has been really key. We've got a lot of partnerships that have emerged in the last 5 years as stronger than ever. Partnerships with some of our staple partners like the Park District, the library, 40 North. I, of course, want to see those partnerships sustained, and I think that they will, but it's something to just make sure the commission is also aware of. Those have really grown, so really want to see those continue in different ways, whether they shapeshift or whatever, but, very important. We also, in 2018, became the Urbana Arts and Culture Program, as opposed to what was previously named the Urbana Public Arts Program. And the idea behind that at the time that was very highly discussed, but will be new to some of the commissioners here around the table, is that it was really an emphasis on diversity, on bolstering cultural work as an essential part of the arts. And that attention was something that was very huge in terms of the re-envisioning. Our mission now, as it is stated as a mission statement, is celebrating Urbana's artistic and cultural diversity. And so I think an emphasis on diversity, cultural competency, and how the commission continues its work and the arts coordinator continues their work, diversity in program design, those things will continue to be important. And I did share internally, but I want to share externally as well, that I do hope that the arts coordinator continues to be integrated into broader city processes that I think the arts coordinator can lend a lot of support to and advice to. So for instance, even things like special event permitting processes, certainly shouldn't manage it. They're really a direct ask of the Public Works Department in assisting with road closures or things like this. But half the time, there's also questions about the event generally and sort of what it's about. And it's not uncommon that we've actually sponsored the event through arts grants. So having sort of integration of the work of the coordinator into other projects at the city, I think will be helpful and is more of a broader vision that could help the arts program going forward. But all in all, as the city continues to fill positions that have been vacant, I think it'll also be helpful to the coordinator. Things like administrative support. We've had a lot of administrative positions go unfilled for a time or be filled, but kind of shifting. And that result of that is that there is more administrative work that the coordinator is responsible for. And so the hope is that eventually those things will also have shared support. But I'm very much thrilled about the continuation of this program. I look forward to working with the arts coordinator once they're selected, because my new role is one of engagement. So it'll be very natural that I would come and work with that person and with the commission. So I look forward to that, and I think that you'll hopefully have a more robust update about that hiring process. My hope around this is that there may be even a role that the commission can play, and I would encourage you to ask about that if you were interested in playing a role in the supporting recruitment or anything for the position. Yeah. And that's it. That brings us to the end of the agenda, unless you have questions about that.
I have a question, Rachel. Realistically, when is if the position is going to go out in a few weeks, what would be the earliest that there could be a replacement of your position?
I wish I could answer that question. I think it's a great one to direct to the city staff who will be here, because again, there's such a moment of backlog of jobs that I'm not certain. And I do know there, in the past years with the pandemic, but also perhaps other factors contributing, there have been times where positions are open for a long while. I have been assured that this is a priority, that the arts program is seen for its activity and everything that it brings to the community. But I don't know tangibly what that will mean. So I would encourage, I assume that will maybe be described in more detail in September, but I would encourage that to be a question that you pose to the staff that are still here. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie McMahon, I think, will be a good resource to the commission in the meantime, but there will potentially, there might be other folks that you'll see at meetings to help sustain it until an arts coordinator is named. Yeah. Any other questions? It is different than Barbara has seen. We've had a lot of different arts coordinators over the years, but we've often typically had a public arts intern at the time, so that person has also helped run commission meetings and stuff and continued, management of the program on a smaller scale, but usually we've had about a 20-hour-a-week public arts intern. Most other times that there was an interim lapse, and
Yeah, it took a while to grow into that, but definitely
Yeah.
there was that option.
Yep, and then we have, obviously, the economic development manager in the past, now economic development supervisor, that is Stephanie, and that person, previously Brandon Boys, would often give support to the program until a new arts coordinator is named. So that's not gonna be unusual for this commission to have Stephanie stepping in to support it. Yeah. All right, any other questions? Stay tuned, more information in September. Okay.
Do we have to ask for a recommendation to close the meeting?
I think so,
I think so.
technically.
Can we have a motion to close the meeting today? Anyone want to offer?
Unless you want to stay meeting.
A motion? I second it. I have to go teach. I'm late now.
Okay, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
I
All right. Your meeting is adjourned.
will miss you.